You're watching Jasmine Love Tales' original story. They say Valentine's is for lovers, but nobody warns you it's also for ghosts. I knew my life was about to shatter the moment that black limousine rolled through Black Fang Hollow and the entire town fell silent. Not because the vehicle screamed money, not because the windows were tinted darker than midnight, but because the golden crest burned into the door belonged to a name I'd spent 8 years trying to forget. Nightclaw. 8 years ago, I fled this town with nothing but grief, carving holes in my chest and a promise I never got to keep. I left behind my grandmother's cottage that smelled like pine smoke and old prayers, the snow that fell like broken stars, and the boy who once held my face like I was something sacred in a world built to devour us both. Nathan Nightclaw. Back then, he was just the prince of the pack, wild eyes, restrained power, and a gentleness he buried beneath pride and fangs. Now he was the billionaire alpha king whose empire stretched across continents and whose name people whispered like both benediction and curse. And I, Irene Blackfang, had returned to Black Fang Hollow for Valentine's to care for my dying grandmother, completely unaware that the man I once loved was hiding a secret so devastating it could turn forever into a funeral. Hey, quick question. Have you ever loved someone so hard that even 8 years of silence couldn't kill what you felt? Thank you so much for being here. It really means the world to me. I'm working toward 1,000 subscribers, and if Irene's story is already pulling at your heart, please hit that subscribe button for Jasmine Love Tales. Smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Alright, thank you. Now let's get back to what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. The cottage sat exactly where memory had preserved it, at the edge of the woods, where the wind carried voices that didn't belong to the living. Snow clung to the roof like sugar on dark cake. My rental car crunched over the gravel driveway, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the steering wheel. 25 years old, and I still felt 17 inside these town limits. My grandmother, Sabine Blackfang, waited on the porch wrapped in blankets despite the cold. Her silver hair caught moonlight. Her face had more lines than I remembered, deeper grooves around her mouth and eyes. But when she saw me step out of the car, she smiled like I'd brought spring with me. Irene. Her voice cracked on my name. I crossed the distance between us and folded into her arms. She smelled like rosemary and wood smoke and something medicinal I didn't want to name. Her body felt smaller than it should, like time had been stealing pieces of her while I was gone. I'm here, Grandma. I'm here now. She pulled back and cupped my face with trembling hands. Her eyes, still sharp, still knowing, searched mine with an intensity that made my chest ache. You shouldn't have come back. My stomach dropped. What? Not for me. She glanced toward the tree line, where shadows moved differently than they should. You're not safe here anymore, child. Not with him back in power. I didn't need to ask who him was. Inside, the cottage wrapped around me like a memory made solid. The same worn armchair by the fireplace. The same shelves crammed with leather-bound books that smelled like centuries. The same photographs on the mantel, including one of my parents on their wedding day, young and alive and unaware that an icy bridge would steal everything. I set my suitcase down and tried to ignore the weight pressing against my ribs. The doctors said you have maybe 6 months. Sabine lowered herself into her chair with careful movements. Doctors don't know everything. Some sicknesses have roots they can't see. Grandma, did you think about him on the drive here? She asked quietly. My throat closed. I turned toward the window where snow had started falling again, thick and silent. Every mile. He never stopped asking about you, Sabine said. Not once in 8 years. I closed my eyes against the sting. Then why did his letters stop coming? Silence filled the room like floodwater. When I turned back, Sabine's face had crumpled with a guilt so raw it made her look ancient. Because your aunt and uncle made sure of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my old bedroom window, the same window I used to sneak out of when Nathan would wait in the woods, patient as stone, and watch the forest breathe. Somewhere out there, beyond the pines and the darkness, his territory began. The Nightclaw Pack controlled everything north of Black Fang Hollow, thousands of acres, dozens of families, a hierarchy older than the town itself. And at the top of it all now sat Nathan Alpha King, Billionaire, the kind of power that didn't just command respect but demanded submission. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. 8 years ago, I was 17 and shattered. My parents had died 3 months earlier when their car skidded off Route 9 during a snowstorm. The bridge gave way. They drowned in the frozen river below. I watched my father's funeral from behind my aunt's expensive sunglasses, numb and hollow, while Nathan stood at the back of the church in a black suit that made him look older than 18. He found me afterward, alone by my parents' graves. "You don't have to be strong right now," he'd said, voice low and rough even then. I'd collapsed into his chest and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. 2 weeks later, my aunt and uncle, my mother's sister, and her wealthy husband from Seattle arrived with legal paperwork and cold smiles. They had money, connections. A lawyer who made the case that a grieving teenager needed stability, structure, family who could provide opportunities. The judge agreed. I left Black Fang Hollow on a Tuesday morning, while Nathan stood in the driveway, fists clenched, watching the car pull away. I pressed my hand against the back window. He didn't move until we disappeared around the bend. I never saw him again. Until tomorrow. Dawn broke gray and unwelcoming. I dressed in simple clothes, dark jeans, a cream sweater, boots meant for snow, and tried to convince myself I wasn't preparing for battle. Sabine made coffee and toast in silence. She watched me over the rim of her mug with eyes that had seen too much. "You're going to the school today," she said. Not a question. "I start teaching Monday. Figured I should see the place first." "He'll be there." My hand stilled on my coffee cup. "How do you know?" "Because Nathan Nightclaw doesn't let anything happen in this town without his presence or his permission." Sabine set her mug down with a soft click. "He owns half the buildings, funds the hospital, keeps the roads maintained. This place would have died years ago without him." Pride and bitterness warred in my chest. "So he's their savior." "He's their king," Sabine corrected. "And kings don't save, they rule." I stood, needing to move, needing to do something with the energy crawling under my skin. "I'm just going to look around, meet the principal, see my classroom." Sabine caught my wrist as I passed. Her grip was stronger than it should have been. "Irene, listen to me. Whatever you think you know about Nathan, whatever boy you remember, he's not that anymore. War changes men. Power changes them more." "What war?" I whispered. But Sabine just shook her head and let me go. The school smelled exactly the same floor polish, old paper, teenage anxiety baked into the walls. I stood in the main hallway with my coat still buttoned, staring at lockers I used to pass 100 times a day. Headmistress Rowena Gable found me there, her heels announcing her approach like a countdown. She was in her 50s, elegant in a way that suggested old money and older secrets. Her handshake was firm. "Miss Blackfang, welcome home. Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. Gable. We're fortunate to have you." She gestured down the corridor. "Shall we?" She walked me through the building like a tour guide at a museum dedicated to my own past. The library where I used to hide during lunch. The literature classroom where Mrs. Chen taught me that words could be weapons. The east stairwell where Nathan once cornered me between classes and kissed me until the bell rang and we were both late. I swallowed hard and kept walking. "Enrollment is down," Mrs. Gable explained as we moved. "Funding cuts almost closed us 2 years ago. We were days from shuttering when—" She stopped at a wall near the administration office. "Well, you'll see." The donor wall gleamed under recessed lighting, bronze plaques arranged in neat rows, names etched with varying levels of gratitude. Small donations at the bottom, larger ones climbing higher. And at the very top, centered, impossible to miss, Nathan Nightclaw, principal benefactor, $4.7 million. My vision tunneled. Mrs. Gable's voice seemed to come from underwater. He saved us, bought the surrounding land to prevent commercial development, established a scholarship fund, renovated the science wing. Without him, this school would be a memory. I couldn't breathe properly. When did he do this? 3 years ago, right after he returned from overseas. My fingers curled into fists. Overseas? Military contract work, I believe. He doesn't discuss it. Mrs. Gable tilted her head. You seem surprised. I forced my expression neutral. I just didn't realize he was so involved. The Alpha King takes his responsibilities seriously. She checked her watch. Speaking of which, he has a meeting with the board this afternoon. 3 o'clock. He requested the new literature teacher be present. My heart stopped. Requested. Specifically. Mrs. Gable's smile didn't reach her eyes. Is that a problem? Yes. No. Everything. Of course not, I lied. My classroom was on the 2nd floor with windows facing the mountains. Afternoon light slanted through glass, painting everything gold. Desks arranged in neat rows. A whiteboard clean enough to reflect my pale face. Bookshelves waiting to be filled. I set my bag down and tried to imagine teaching here. Tried to picture a normal life in this town where nothing had ever been normal. The door was open. I didn't hear him approach, but I felt him. The air shifted heavier, warmer, electric. Every nerve in my body went on alert before my brain caught up. I turned slowly, already knowing what I'd see. Nathan Nightclaw stood in the doorway like he'd been carved from shadow and moonlight and assembled into something almost human. Taller than I remembered, broader through the shoulders. He wore a black suit tailored so perfectly it looked like armor. His dark hair was shorter now, styled back from a face that had lost its boyish softness and gained edges sharp enough to cut. But his eyes, those eyes were exactly the same. Amber brown with flecks of gold. Wild and intelligent and fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin flush. My heart recognized him before my pride could build walls. Irene. My name in his voice, rough, low, careful, felt like a hand closing around my throat. I gripped the edge of the desk behind me. Alpha King. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or disappointment. He stepped into the room and the space shrank around us. Don't what? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Don't call me that. Not you. The door swung wider and Headmistress Gable appeared, smiling brightly, completely oblivious to the storm she'd walked into. Perfect. You've already met? Irene Blackfang, our new literature teacher. Alpha King Nathan Nightclaw, our guardian angel. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His gaze never left mine. We've met. Mrs. Gable beamed. Wonderful. Then the 3 o'clock meeting should be quite productive. She excused herself, heels clicking away down the hall, leaving us alone in a silence so thick I could taste it. Nathan moved closer. Not aggressive, not casual. Deliberate. Like every step was a question he was asking with his body. He stopped 3 feet away and extended his hand. Welcome home. Professional. Distant. Safe. I stared at his hand strong, scarred across the knuckles in ways that hadn't been there before, and knew touching him was a mistake. I did it anyway. The moment our skin connected, heat shot up my arm like lightning finding ground. His fingers closed around mine, grip firm but not crushing, and I felt my pulse jump so hard I knew he could feel it too. His thumb brushed across my knuckles once. Deliberate. Intimate. You came back, he murmured, voice dropping low enough that only I could hear. I yanked my hand away like I'd touched fire. For my grandmother. I know. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went dark. How is Sabine? Dying. The word landed between us like a stone. Nathan's shoulders shifted beneath his suit. His hands flexed once at his sides before he controlled them. I'm sorry. Are you? The question came out sharper than I intended. You've been here for years. You could have checked on her. I did. His voice went flat, hard. Every week, she told me to stay away from you if you ever returned, said you'd built a new life and I'd only ruin it. My breath caught. She what? Your grandmother loves you enough to protect you from me. Nathan's smile was bitter. She's smarter than I am. He turned to leave. Wait. The word escaped before I could stop it. He paused at the doorway, back still to me, shoulders tight. The meeting, I said. Why do you want me there? Nathan looked back over his shoulder. In profile, he looked like something mythic, a king from old stories, dangerous and doomed. Because I need to know if you're staying. Then he left, and I stood alone in the golden afternoon light, shaking. The conference room overlooked the football field where snow had buried the yard lines. 6 board members sat around a mahogany table that probably cost more than my car. Mrs. Gable presided from the head. Nathan sat to her right, perfectly still, perfectly controlled. I took the only empty chair directly across from him. Mistake. His eyes tracked me the entire way. I felt the weight of his attention like hands on my skin. Mrs. Gable called the meeting to order. Budget reports, enrollment projections, fundraising goals. The board members spoke in turns, their voices blending into background noise while I tried not to stare at Nathan's hands resting on the table. Those hands used to be gentle. Now they looked like they'd learned violence. And finally, Mrs. Gable said, pulling me back to the present, we need to discuss the Valentine's Gala. My attention sharpened. It's our primary fundraising event, she continued. Last year we raised over $200,000. This year, with Alpha King Nightclaw's continued support, we're aiming for $500,000. Nathan spoke for the first time, his voice cutting through the room like a blade through silk. I'll match whatever's raised. The board members exchanged pleased glances. Mrs. Gable smiled. Generous as always. We'll need volunteers for the planning committee. Miss Blackfang. She turned to me. As our newest staff member, would you be willing to help coordinate? Every instinct screamed no. Of course, I heard myself say. Excellent. Mrs. Gable made a note. Alpha King Nightclaw chairs the committee. You'll be working closely together. Nathan's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened just slightly, and I watched his jaw tighten like he was biting back words that would shatter the professional veneer. I smiled politely and felt my stomach drop through the floor. The meeting ended at 4:30. I gathered my things quickly, desperate to escape before Nathan could corner me. I made it halfway down the corridor before I heard footsteps behind me, measured, unhurried, inevitable. Irene. I kept walking. I have to get back to my grandmother. Stop. The command in his voice made me freeze instinctively. I hated my body for remembering how to obey him. I turned slowly. Nathan stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, suit jacket open now, looking less like a billionaire and more like the boy who used to wait for me in the woods. Except boys didn't move with that kind of contained power. Boys didn't make the air feel dangerous. You're angry, he said quietly. I'm busy. You're angry because Sabine told you about the letters. My chest tightened. Don't. Or you're angry because I stopped trying. He took one step closer. Which is it? Both. Neither. It doesn't matter. I turned away again. That was 8 years ago, Nathan. We're different people now. Are we? Another step. I could hear it in the floor's echo. Because I look at you, and I see the girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder when we watched stars. The girl who cried so hard at her father's funeral I thought she'd break apart. The girl who promised she'd come back. I spun on him, fury flooding through me like poison. I was 17. My parents were dead. I didn't have a choice. I know that. His voice dropped, rough with something raw. I've always known that. Then why? My voice cracked. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to hold the pieces together. Why didn't you fight harder? Nathan's eyes flashed. For a second, I saw the wolf beneath the expensive suit. You think I didn't fight? I drove to Seattle 4 times. Your aunt threatened restraining orders. Your uncle had connections, lawyers, judges, people who could make me disappear if I pushed too hard. And when they told me you were falling apart, that my letters were making you worse, I had to choose between my pride and your peace. Tears burned my eyes. They lied. I know. His hands curled into fists. I figured that out 3 years ago when I came home and Sabine finally told me the truth. By then you'd been gone so long I thought maybe you'd actually moved on. Maybe you'd found someone in England who made you happy. There was no one, I whispered. The confession hung between us like something sacred. Nathan closed the distance between us in 2 strides. He stopped just short of touching me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the scent that was still the same winter pine, and something darker, wilder. Then we're both idiots, he said softly, because I haven't touched another woman seriously in 8 years. My breath stopped. Every business deal, every contract, every fight, I kept thinking maybe if I built something big enough, strong enough, you'd hear about it and know I hadn't forgotten. His voice went rough, that I was still waiting. I looked up at him and saw everything I'd lost written in his face. Nathan. His phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He tensed immediately, every line of his body going rigid. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression went cold. I have to go. What? Why? He was already backing away, the warmth draining from his eyes, replaced by something harder, dangerous. Pack business. I'm sorry. Nathan, wait. But he was gone, striding down the hallway like a man going to war, leaving me standing alone with my heart in pieces on the floor. I drove back to the cottage through snow so thick it looked like the world was erasing itself. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My chest felt hollowed out. Sabine was waiting in her chair by the fire when I walked in. She took one look at my face and set down her tea. You saw him. I closed the door and leaned against it, needing the solid wood to keep me upright. Why didn't you tell me about the letters? Sit down, child. No. My voice came out harder than I intended. You let me believe he'd forgotten me. You let me spend 8 years thinking I wasn't worth remembering. Sabine's face crumpled. I was trying to protect you. From what? I pushed off the door, anger and grief warring in my chest. From loving someone? From having a choice? From the pack. Sabine stood slowly, gripping the armrest for support. You don't understand what it means to be bound to an alpha, especially one like Nathan. Then explain it to me. She moved to the window, staring out at the darkening forest. The Nightclaw pack isn't like others. They're old blood, ancient, the kind of power that doesn't just command, it consumes. Nathan's father was brutal. His grandfather was worse. The position of Alpha King isn't just leadership. It's a throne built on sacrifice and blood. My stomach turned. Nathan isn't like that, isn't he? Sabine turned to face me. Do you know what he did overseas? The contracts he fulfilled? I shook my head. Private security in war zones, extraction operations, classified work that required men who could kill without hesitation and live with the consequences. Her voice dropped. He came back different. Harder. The boy you knew died somewhere between here and whatever hell he walked through. You don't know that. I see it in his eyes every time he visits. Sabine crossed to the mantel and pulled down an old wooden box I'd never seen before. She opened it carefully and withdrew a stack of letters bound with string. My heart stopped. He wrote you every week for the first year, Sabine said quietly. Then every month. Then just on your birthday. The last one came 3 years ago, right after he returned from deployment. She held them out to me. I took them with shaking hands. The top envelope was addressed in handwriting I recognized immediately, slanted, precise, unmistakably Nathan's. Your aunt intercepted most of them, Sabine continued, but a few got through to me. I kept them, thinking maybe someday you'd be ready. And now? My voice barely worked. Now I'm dying, And I don't want to take secrets to my grave. She touched my cheek gently. Read them, Irene, and then decide if you still want to love a man who's learned how to be a monster. I took the letters to my bedroom and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, hands trembling as I untied the string. The first letter was dated 3 weeks after I left. Irene, I don't know if you'll get this. Your aunt says you don't want to hear from me. She says I'm making things worse. But I need you to know I'm not giving up. Not on us, not ever. The pack asks about you. I tell them you're coming back. I have to believe it's true. Please write back, even one word, just so I know you're okay. Nathan. My vision blurred. The second letter, 2 months later. Irene, your uncle's lawyer called my father, said if I keep trying to contact you, there will be legal consequences. I don't care about consequences, but if I'm really hurting you, I need to know. Sabine won't tell me anything. She just says you need time. How much time? How many days until I'm allowed to tell you I can't sleep, because every dream ends with you walking away? I'm still here. I'm always here. Nathan. I pressed the letter to my chest and tried to breathe through the ache. The dates jumped forward. 6 months, 1 year, 18 months. The tone changed darker, more desperate. Irene. I'm leaving for a contract overseas. Private security. The kind of work that doesn't come with guarantees. My father says I'm running from you. Maybe he's right. If I don't make it back, I need you to know you were the only good thing in my life. The only person who looked at me and saw something worth saving. I loved you. I still love you. I'll love you even if this letter never finds you. Nathan. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the final letter, postmarked 3 years ago. Irene. I came home from war and found out the truth. Your aunt lied. You never told me to stop writing. You never wanted me gone. I spent 3 years becoming the kind of man who could protect you from anything, and it turns out the only thing you needed protection from was me believing them. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to come back. But if you ever do, if you ever set foot in Black Fang Hollow again, I'll be waiting. I'm always waiting. Nathan. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by 8 years of longing and lies, and finally let myself cry. I read all the letters twice. Then I stood up, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. Sabine caught my wrist as I passed. Where are you going? To find him. Irene, it's almost midnight. I don't care. I pulled free gently. I wasted 8 years. I'm not wasting another night. The drive to Nathan's estate took 20 minutes through snow-heavy roads. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating pine trees like silent witnesses. The GPS led me off the main road onto a private drive marked only by a wrought iron gate with the Nightclaw crest. The gate opened automatically. I drove through, heart hammering, onto a winding path that climbed higher into the mountains. The trees thinned. The house appeared like something out of a dark fairy tale, massive, modern, built from stone and glass and shadows. Security lights swept across the snow. I parked in the circular driveway and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. What am I doing? Then I saw movement on the front porch. Nathan stood beneath the entrance light, but he wasn't alone. A woman emerged from inside the house, tall, elegant, wrapped in a dark fur coat that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was pale blonde, styled perfectly, her posture suggesting old money and practiced grace. She said something I couldn't hear. Nathan responded, leaning in slightly. Then he kissed her cheek. The casual intimacy of it, the ease hit me like a fist to the chest. My vision tunneled. My breath stopped. Of course a billionaire alpha king wouldn't spend 8 years alone. Of course he'd moved on. I slammed the car into reverse before my brain could fully process the pain. Tires spun on the snow. I turned too sharply, fishtailing slightly, and drove back down the mountain like I was being chased by something with teeth. I didn't stop crying until I reached Sabine's cottage. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of Nathan with that woman over and over until it was burned into my retinas. The worst part? I had no right to be angry. We weren't together. We hadn't been together for 8 years. He'd written letters begging me to respond, and I'd never gotten them. He'd waited, and then he'd done what any sane person would do. He'd moved on. I dragged myself out of bed at dawn and made coffee with shaking hands. Sabine found me at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. "You went to him," she said quietly. I didn't answer. And he wasn't alone. I looked up sharply. "How did you know?" Sabine poured herself tea and sat across from me. "Because Catherine Vespera has been his legal counsel for 2 years. She handles PAC contracts and international negotiations. She's also been trying to become his mate since the day they met." My stomach lurched. His mate. She wants the position. Nathan hasn't given it to her. Sabine studied my face. But from a distance, I imagine it looked quite different. I stood abruptly, needing to move. "It doesn't matter. I shouldn't have gone there. This whole thing was a mistake." "Was it?" Sabine's voice went soft. "Or did you just find out that loving him still hurts, and you're looking for an excuse to run?" The accusation landed like a slap. I grabbed my coat. "I have to get to the school. Irene." But I was already out the door. I managed to avoid Nathan all day. I buried myself in lesson planning, organizing my classroom. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from replaying that kiss on the cheek. At 4 o'clock, I retreated to the library, 2 floors of silence and old books where I could disappear. I was wrong. I heard him before I saw him, footsteps on hard wood, deliberate and unhurried. I looked up from the stack of novels I was reviewing to find Nathan standing at the end of the aisle, blocking the only exit. He'd ditched the suit jacket. His white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that hadn't been that muscular 8 years ago. He looked tired, dangerous. "You came to my house last night," he said. My hands tightened on the book I was holding. "I shouldn't have. I saw your car." He moved closer, 1 step at a time, like he was approaching something that might bolt. "Why did you run?" I kept my eyes on the shelf in front of me. "I told you. I was just leaving." Irene. My name was a command. "Look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. Mistake. They were too intense, too knowing, stripping away every defense I'd tried to build. "You saw Catherine," he said quietly. My throat closed. I couldn't speak. Nathan's jaw tightened. "And you made assumptions." "I didn't." "You did." He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, backing me against the bookshelf. Not aggressive, just close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the scent that made my hindbrain remember things it shouldn't. "The woman you saw is Catherine Vespera. She's my legal counsel. She handles PAC contracts and international negotiations." "It's none of my business," I managed. "Isn't it?" His voice dropped, going rough. "You drove to my house at midnight. You must have had a reason." I looked away. I read the letters. Silence crashed down between us like a physical weight. When I dared glance back, Nathan's expression had shifted, raw, vulnerable, stripped of the careful control he'd maintained since walking into my classroom. "All of them?" he asked hoarsely. I nodded. "And then you saw me with Catherine and assumed—" He broke off, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "Assumed what?" "That I'd spend 8 years writing letters begging you to come back, then replace you the moment you walked into town?" "People move on," I whispered. "I haven't." The words came out fierce. Final. "I haven't taken a mate. Not seriously. Not since you." My pulse jumped. "Nathan, you still wear my mark in your eyes," he continued, voice lower now, intimate. "I can see it. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Like maybe you're still in there somewhere. Like maybe we're not completely ruined." I couldn't breathe. "We barely know each other anymore. Don't we?" He leaned in slightly, and I felt every nerve in my body light up like I'd been touched by lightning. Your heart's racing. I can hear it. You're breathing faster. Your pupils are dilated. Your body remembers me even if your mind is trying to deny it. That's not fair. None of this is fair. His hand came up, knuckles brushing my cheek with devastating gentleness. But it's true. I shivered, not from cold. His eyes darkened, tracking the response. Tell me you don't feel it. I opened my mouth to lie. Then Nathan's entire body went rigid. His head snapped toward the darker end of the aisle, eyes narrowing like a predator catching scent of something wrong. Someone's here, he murmured. Ice slid down my spine. What? We're being watched. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. His hand moved to the small of my back, protective, possessive. Stay behind me. He moved forward slowly, scanning the shadows between the shelves. I followed, heart slamming against my ribs. The aisle opened into a reading area with tall windows, empty chairs, abandoned tables. Nothing. But Nathan stood perfectly still, every muscle tense, nostrils flaring slightly like he was scenting the air. They're gone, he said finally. But they were here. Who? My voice shook. Nathan turned to face me, and for the first time since he'd walked into my classroom, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. Someone who shouldn't be able to get this close without my wolves knowing. I left the library shaken and drove back to town to pick up Sabine's medication from the pharmacy. The moment I walked into Thornfield Drugs, conversation stopped. Mrs. Henderson behind the counter smiled too brightly. Irene Blackfang, heard you were back. Just picking up for my grandmother. Of course, dear. She processed the prescription with careful movements. Must be interesting, working at the academy now that Alpha King Nightclaw is so involved. My stomach tightened. It's fine. Such a generous man. Did you know he paid for the new children's wing at the hospital? And the fire station renovations? She leaned in conspiratorially. They say he's worth over $3 billion. Can you imagine? I couldn't imagine. I could barely process it. I took the medication and fled. Back at the cottage, I waited until Sabine went to bed. Then I opened my laptop and typed, Nathan Nightclaw net worth. The results loaded like an avalanche. Forbes, Nathan Nightclaw, billionaire CEO of Nightclaw Security Group. Business Insider. From Alpha Wolf to global defense contractor. WSJ, Nightclaw Security expands operations in Eastern Europe. I clicked through article after article, each one more overwhelming than the last. Photos of Nathan in expensive suits shaking hands with government officials. Articles detailing military contracts worth hundreds of millions. Speculation about classified operations in conflict zones. Rumors of casualties. Missing teams. Operations that went sideways. One headline made my blood run cold. Nightclaw security team missing in Syria. 6 operatives unaccounted for. The article was 3 years old. I clicked it with shaking hands. 6 members of Nightclaw Security's elite extraction team disappeared during a classified operation in Damascus. Sources suggest the team was ambushed. CEO Nathan Nightclaw personally led the search and rescue operation, but returned with only 3 survivors. The fate of the remaining operatives remains unknown. My vision blurred. This was what Sabine meant. This was the war that had changed him. I kept reading deal after deal, contract after contract, building an empire on violence and strategy and survival. And underneath it all, threaded through every article, were the same whispered questions. How does he always know where to be? How do his teams succeed when others fail? What makes Nightclaw Security different? The answer was never stated outright, but I knew. Werewolf senses, pack coordination, abilities that made them better hunters, better soldiers, better killers than any human team could be. Nathan hadn't just survived war. He'd weaponized his nature and sold it to the highest bidder. The next morning, I needed coffee and distance from my own thoughts. I ended up at Murphy's Diner on Main Street, red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played country. I was halfway through my scrambled eggs when a man slid into the booth across from me uninvited. He was in his 40s, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen too much and stopped caring. His jacket was expensive. His eyes were cold. "Irene Blackfang," he said. I set down my fork. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you." He extended a business card across the table. "Marcus Thorne. I represent certain interests that are concerned about your relationship with Alpha King Nightclaw." My pulse spiked. "I don't have a relationship with—" "Please." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You were at his estate 2 nights ago. You're working closely with him at the academy. You're living in a cottage he pays the property taxes on." My blood ran cold. "He what? Didn't know?" Marcus leaned back. "Nathan Nightclaw has been financially supporting your grandmother for 3 years. Anonymously, of course. Very generous of him." I couldn't breathe. "The point is," Marcus continued smoothly, "there are people who would prefer you maintain distance from the Alpha King. People who have significant investments in his operations remaining stable. Is that a threat?" "It's advice." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Nightclaw Security has enemies. People who would use any vulnerability against him. Right now, Miss Blackfang, you're a vulnerability." He walked out, leaving his business card on the table like a warning. I stared at it, hands shaking, until the coffee went cold. I was packing Sabine's medications when Nathan appeared at the front door. He didn't knock. He just stood there in the falling snow, looking like something carved from winter itself, dark coat, jaw tight, eyes burning with barely restrained intensity. I opened the door before he could. "You paid my grandmother's taxes," I said. "Yes. For 3 years. Yes." No apology. No excuse. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me so Sabine wouldn't hear. "Why?" "Because she needed help and you weren't here to give it." His voice was flat, hard. Someone had to make sure she was safe. "You should have told me." "When?" He moved closer, snow catching in his dark hair. "When your aunt's lawyers threatened me if I contacted you? When you were building a new life in England? When exactly should I have explained that I couldn't stop caring about the people you loved?" The raw honesty in his voice cut through my anger like a blade. "I'm not your responsibility," I whispered. "Yes, you are." He closed the distance between us in 2 strides. "You've always been my responsibility. Since the moment I first saw you crying at your father's grave and swore I'd never let you hurt like that again. You can't protect me from everything. Watch me try." We stood there in the snow, close enough to touch, both of us trembling with things we couldn't say. Then Nathan reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "It's not a ring," he said quickly. "Not yet." He opened it. Inside, nestled on black silk, was a silver charm in the shape of a crescent moon. The air left my lungs in a rush. "That's the charm you gave me," Nathan finished quietly. "The night before you left. You put it in my hand and made me promise I'd keep it until you came back." My vision blurred. I'd forgotten. 8 years and grief had buried that memory so deep I thought it was gone. "I kept it through every deployment," he continued, voice rough. "Through every operation that should have killed me. Through every night I woke up thinking I'd die without seeing you again." He lifted the charm from the box, and I saw the thin chain attached. "I had it repaired," he said, "so you could wear it, if you wanted." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Nathan stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat from his body cutting through the cold. His free hand came up slowly, knuckles brushing my cheek with aching gentleness. "Irene," he murmured, "I know I'm not the boy you left behind. I know I've done things, built things that would terrify you if you knew the whole truth. But I need you to understand something." He waited until I met his eyes. "Every choice I made," he said softly. "Every contract, every mission, every dollar earned, I was building a fortress. Because if you ever came back, I wanted to be strong enough, powerful enough, untouchable enough that nothing and no one could ever take you from me again. A tear slipped down my cheek. Nathan's thumb caught it, wiping it away with devastating tenderness. "May I?" he asked, holding up the necklace. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He moved behind me, and I felt his hands warm, steady, scarred fasten the chain around my neck. The charm settled against my collarbone like a promise, like a brand. When he came back around, his eyes had gone dark with something that made my skin flush. "There's one more thing," he said quietly. "What?" He leaned in slow, giving me every chance to pull away, and I didn't. His mouth met mine with controlled hunger, like he'd been holding back for 8 years and was finally allowed to breathe. The kiss was gentle at first, testing, remembering. Then I made a small sound in my throat, and everything shifted. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him. The kiss deepened, heat curling through me in waves, intimate but not aggressive, the kind of kiss that promised everything while demanding nothing. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine. "Irene." "Yeah?" "I'm not safe," he whispered. "The things I've done, the people I've made enemies of, being with me could get you killed." I reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble, the strong jaw, the warmth of him. "Then teach me how to survive." His eyes flashed something wild and possessive and deeply satisfied. Then his phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass. Nathan pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and every line of his body went rigid. The warmth drained from his eyes, replaced by something cold. "Lethal," he answered. "Corvin, report." I watched his expression change from concern to fury to something close to dread. "When?" His voice went flat. "How many?" A pause. His jaw tightened like he was biting back words that would shatter stone. "Understood. I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at me like he was memorizing my face. "I have to go." "What? Where?" "There's been an incident at the northern border, Pack territory." He grabbed my hand and pressed something into my palm, a ring-shaped pendant, still warm from his skin. "My anchor. If I don't come back." "Don't say that." "If I don't come back," he repeated firmly, "this will tell you where to find the truth." He kissed me once more, hard, desperate, final, and then he was gone, swallowed by snow and darkness, leaving me standing on the porch with his charm around my neck and his anchor burning in my hand. Valentine's Day came and went. No word from Nathan. I wore his charm and clutched his anchor and tried not to imagine the worst. February 15th, 16th, 17th. The pack began whispering. I heard it at the grocery store, the pharmacy, the school. "The Alpha King hasn't been seen. Something's wrong. There was an attack." On February 18th, Mrs. Gable pulled me aside. "Have you heard from Alpha King Nightclaw?" My stomach dropped. "No." "Why?" "The board received notice that he's unavailable for the foreseeable future." Her expression was carefully neutral. "We're proceeding with Valentine's gala planning without him." I wanted to scream. "What does unavailable mean?" "I don't know, Miss Blackfang. I'm sorry." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my bedroom window, staring at the forest where his territory began, and felt the charm warm against my skin. "Come back," I thought desperately. "Please come back." The forest didn't answer. February 21st arrived with freezing rain and a sky the color of bruises. I was helping Sabine with dinner when headlights cut through the dusk. A black SUV pulled into the driveway, sleek, military-grade, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes in reality. My hands went numb. A man stepped out, massive, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of precision that suggested military training and lethal capability. He was in his late 30s, with a face carved from granite and eyes that assessed threats before offering pleasantries. He knocked once. I opened the door with shaking hands. "Irene Blackfang?" His voice was rough, American Midwest accent. "Yes." "Magnus Corvin, second in command of Nightclaw Security." He didn't offer his hand. "May I come in?" I stepped aside numbly. Magnus entered, taking in the cottage with a single sweeping glance. Exits, windows, weaknesses. Sabine appeared from the kitchen, and I watched her face go pale. "Magnus," she breathed. "Where is he?" Magnus's expression remained neutral, professional. But I saw something flicker in his eyes that made my blood run cold. "Alpha King Nightclaw is missing," he said. The words landed like a physical blow. "Missing," I repeated stupidly. "There was an ambush at the northern border. February 14th. We believe it was coordinated, multiple entry points, professional execution. Nathan engaged to buy time for evacuation." Magnus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He was last seen holding off 7 hostiles while the pack retreated. We lost contact shortly after." My legs wouldn't hold me. I sank into the nearest chair. 7 days, I whispered. "It's been 7 days and you're just telling me now?" "We've been conducting search and extraction operations." Magnus finally met my eyes fully, and I saw exhaustion there. Grief, carefully controlled. "As of this morning, the council has moved to declare him deceased." "No," the word came out too loud, too desperate. "You don't have a body. We have evidence suggesting he didn't survive." Magnus pulled a tablet from his jacket and set it on the table. Security footage played grainy, infrared, showing figures moving through trees. Nathan, unmistakable even in thermal imaging, surrounded, fighting with lethal precision. Then an explosion. Static. Nothing. I couldn't breathe. "The council is moving to install interim leadership," Magnus continued. "There will be a formal declaration on February 28th. "I don't care about the council." I looked up at him. "Do you think he's dead?" Magnus held my gaze for a long moment. "I think Nathan Nightclaw has survived things that should have killed him a dozen times over. But I also think if he could have contacted us, he would have." Hope and despair warred in my chest. "Why are you here?" I asked quietly. "Because before Nathan left, he updated his will. You're listed as primary beneficiary." The room tilted. "What?" "If he's declared dead, you inherit controlling interest in Nightclaw Security Group, all pack holdings, and this." Magnus pulled an envelope from his jacket, heavy paper, Nathan's handwriting across the front. "For Irene. To be opened only if I don't return." My hands shook so badly I almost couldn't take it. "There's one more thing," Magnus said, voice dropping. "The council doesn't believe you should exist." I looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means the people who want Nathan dead want you gone too." His expression hardened. "You're not just Irene Blackfang. You're the key to a bloodline Nathan was born to protect. And there are forces, old forces, that have been waiting decades for the Nightclaw line to weaken." Ice slid down my spine. "I don't understand." Sabine spoke for the first time, her voice trembling. "Your mother was from the Silver Moon Pack, ancient bloodline. When she mated with your father, a Blackfang, it created a link between 2 of the most powerful pack families in North America." My head spun. "But my parents died in an accident." "Did they?" Magnus's eyes were hard. "Or were they eliminated before you could be recognized as a bridge between territories, before you could become exactly what Nathan's been protecting you from?" The cottage suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Outside, something howled low and wrong. Not quite wolf, not quite human. Magnus tensed immediately. His hand moved to his jacket where I knew a weapon waited. "They're here," he said quietly. "Who?" My voice barely worked. "The ones who took Nathan." Magnus moved to the window, scanning the tree line. "The ones who've been hunting your bloodline for 30 years. Another howl, closer now. Then another. Then a dozen more, surrounding the cottage like a noose tightening. Magnus turned to face me, expression grim. Miss Blackfang, I need you to listen very carefully. What happens in the next 5 minutes will determine whether Nathan's sacrifice meant anything. Do you trust me? I clutched the envelope against my chest. The charm around my neck burned hot against my skin. Yes. Then we need to run. The first window shattered. If you want part 2, where Irene discovers what's really hunting her, learns the truth about her bloodline, and finds out whether Nathan is truly dead or fighting his way back from something worse, subscribe to Jasmine Love Tales and comment Valentine so I know you're ready. Coming soon. Because this story, it's just beginning. And trust me, nothing is what it seems.